Alright everyone, welcome back to Crypto Brain. Over the past 24 hours, a discussion has been building across the XRP community that has genuinely caught the attention of experienced investors, market analysts, and even long-term crypto observers. The reason is simple. The name Bank of America has suddenly begun appearing alongside XRP in a growing number of conversations, and many investors are now asking whether this is merely another social media narrative or whether something far more significant is quietly developing behind the scenes. What makes this situation particularly interesting is that the discussion is not being driven by traditional crypto hype. This is not about a celebrity endorsement, a meme coin rally, or a random price prediction circulating across social media. Instead, the conversation appears to be centered around institutional finance, stablecoins, digital payments, settlement infrastructure, and the future architecture of the global financial system. And whenever those subjects begin appearing together, investors naturally start paying attention. Because the reality is that Bank of America is not just another financial institution. It is one of the most influential banking organizations in the world. When institutions of that size begin exploring financial innovation, blockchain technology, digital settlements, or payment infrastructure, the market takes notice. The question many XRP holders are asking right now is straightforward. Why is this discussion accelerating now? Have institutions quietly moved beyond the experimentation phase and entered the preparation phase? Are major financial players beginning to position themselves for a future where blockchain technology becomes integrated into traditional finance? Or is the market simply reading too much into a collection of unrelated developments? These are important questions because if there is one thing history has repeatedly shown us, it is that major shifts in financial infrastructure rarely happen overnight. They happen gradually. First, discussions begin. Then institutions conduct research. After that, infrastructure is developed. Adoption follows, and only later does the broader public realize what has been taking place. For many years, Bitcoin dominated institutional conversations. Whenever corporations, hedge funds, family offices, or asset managers sought exposure to digital assets, Bitcoin was usually their first destination. It became the benchmark asset of the crypto market and the primary gateway for institutional participation. However, over the past few years, the conversation has slowly evolved. Today, discussions are no longer limited to digital gold narratives or store-of-value arguments. Increasingly, institutions are focusing on tokenized assets, stablecoins, treasury management, liquidity networks, digital settlements, and cross-border payment systems. And this is precisely where XRP repeatedly enters the conversation. Supporters of XRP have long argued that the asset's true value lies not simply in speculation but in utility. Their argument is that financial systems require efficient movement of value, and that blockchain networks capable of supporting that function could become increasingly important over time. Whether one agrees with that perspective or not, it is difficult to ignore the fact that institutional conversations are becoming increasingly focused on infrastructure rather than speculation. That distinction matters, because institutions do not typically evaluate technology in the same way retail investors do. Retail investors often focus on price charts, short-term momentum, and market sentiment. Institutions tend to focus on scalability, compliance, efficiency, risk management, operational reliability, and long-term utility. In other words, they ask a different question. Not how much can this asset increase in price, but rather, can this technology solve a meaningful problem? That is why discussions surrounding blockchain-based payment systems continue to attract attention. Financial institutions move trillions of dollars globally every year. Any technology capable of reducing friction, lowering costs, increasing speed, or improving settlement efficiency naturally becomes worthy of consideration. And this brings us to another reason why XRP continues to generate discussion. Ripple has spent years positioning itself within areas that institutions care about most. Payments, custody, tokenization, stablecoins, liquidity management, and enterprise solutions have become major parts of its broader strategy. To many analysts, this no longer looks like the strategy of a company focused solely on cryptocurrency markets. Instead, it resembles the strategy of an organization attempting to establish itself within the infrastructure layer of digital finance. And perhaps the most important word in that entire discussion is one that many investors overlook: compliance. The banking industry has always prioritized trust before speed. A system can be incredibly fast, but if it cannot satisfy regulatory requirements, institutions will be reluctant to adopt it. This is why compliance remains one of the most important factors influencing institutional blockchain adoption. When investors hear discussions involving licenses, regulatory clarity, financial oversight, institutional partnerships, and legal frameworks, they interpret those developments as signals that the industry is maturing. And as the industry matures, institutional participation often becomes easier. This is one reason why many XRP investors closely monitor developments involving regulations, banking partnerships, stablecoin adoption, and enterprise blockchain initiatives. They understand something important. Capital rarely moves first. Narratives move first. Discussions move first. Institutional interest moves first. Then adoption follows. Then capital arrives. This pattern has repeated itself across multiple industries throughout history. The internet followed this pattern. Mobile technology followed this pattern. Artificial intelligence is currently following this pattern, and many investors believe blockchain technology may be following the same path. Now, does that automatically mean XRP becomes a dominant player in future financial infrastructure? Not necessarily. But it does explain why investors continue paying close attention whenever discussions involving major financial institutions begin accelerating. Because perception matters, and perception often influences capital flows. When investors begin seeing traditional finance and blockchain technology moving closer together, they naturally become more interested in assets associated with those developments. That is exactly why the current conversation surrounding Bank of America and XRP has attracted so much attention. The discussion is not really about a single institution. It is about what that institution represents. It represents traditional finance. And whenever traditional finance appears to move closer towards blockchain infrastructure, market participants immediately begin speculating about which networks could potentially benefit. This is where another important trend enters the discussion: stablecoins. Many industry analysts believe stablecoins could become one of the most significant developments in financial technology over the coming decade. Some projections suggest that the stablecoin market could eventually reach trillions of dollars in value. If that occurs, those stablecoins will require infrastructure. They will require liquidity. They will require settlement systems. They will require networks capable of moving value efficiently across multiple jurisdictions. And once again, that is where conversations involving XRP, Ripple, and digital payment infrastructure tend to emerge. The key point here is not whether a particular prediction becomes reality tomorrow. The key point is that institutions are increasingly discussing these topics seriously, and serious discussions often precede serious adoption. Perhaps the biggest difference between today's XRP narrative and the narrative of previous market cycles is the focus. Years ago, conversations revolved almost entirely around price. Today, conversations increasingly revolve around infrastructure, liquidity, compliance, tokenization, stablecoins, institutional adoption, and future financial systems. That shift is important, because it suggests that the market may be gradually moving beyond speculation and towards practical implementation. Whether that transition happens quickly or slowly remains uncertain. But the direction of the conversation itself appears to be changing, and investors are paying attention. For now, the most important takeaway is simple. Institutional discussions surrounding blockchain technology continue to grow. Traditional finance and digital assets appear to be moving closer together. Stablecoins are expanding rapidly. Infrastructure conversations are becoming more common, and XRP continues to find itself at the center of many of those discussions. Will that ultimately translate into greater adoption? Only time will tell. But one thing is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The conversation surrounding XRP today feels very different from the conversation we were having just a few years ago. And whenever the conversation changes, the market usually pays attention. As always, none of this should be considered financial advice. The cryptocurrency market remains highly volatile and involves substantial risk. Always conduct your own research and make investment decisions based on your own financial circumstances. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe institutions are quietly preparing for the next phase of blockchain adoption, or do you think the market is still overestimating the significance of these developments? Thank you very much for watching. It is always an honor. I'm Crypto Brain, and I'll see you in the next one.